Everyone says that you don't get to choose your own family, but when you're an adult, you do get to choose whether or not they're involved in your life. What if you're so accustomed to treating your family with contempt that you completely ignore it when they try to reconcile with you? Even with a life-changing event like cancer, it can still be difficult to change course when the relationship has been rocky for so long. Luckily for the protagonist, a kind woman from the office steps in to help point out the error of his ways and why it's important to make amends while he still can. If you missed the seventh tale, Salvation, please don't forget to listen to the reading. I'll drop a hover card in the upper right so you can click on it, or in the description below. The tales are best read in sequential order. I hope that you'll find this particular tale interesting, and please feel free to leave any comments or feedback. This is the 8th tale of Cancerika, with 4 more to go, so I'm really hoping you like the overall story. Please let me know if it's any good or not. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can catch more tales as they are released. Please enjoy the 8th tale of Cancerika, Connection, a Tale of Two Dinners. Cancerika, Tales of Survival, Despair, and Hilarity. Written and narrated by Beauheart. Tale number 8, Connection, a Tale of Two Dinners. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you, and you may live long on the earth. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 to 3. My initial days of fighting cancer had, admittedly, been highly precarious and unpredictable. Almost dying, going to jail, and becoming possessed. This probably wasn't what the doctor had in mind when he first came up with my chemotherapy plan. However, after about a month, I had finally gotten into a steady groove. I was back at work doing my usual IT job, and it was going pretty well. I even felt better at work than I had before the cancer, since I seemed to have a lot more focus. I skipped out of the office every Tuesday and Friday afternoon to get my blood tested and do a round of chemo, which was usually injections into my stomach plus some pills. The good news was that the doctor said my kidneys had returned to 100% functionality, and the lesions on my bones were slowly improving. Your chemotherapy is going well. Just keep eating healthy, take your prescribed medicine, get enough sleep, the oncologist routinely said. The doctor's orders sounded easy enough. As long as I didn't make any more boneheaded blunders, my chances of survival were decent. I was even able to find time to get Tom a nice present for saving my life at the mall. It was a new fanny pack with a Huey flying across the main pouch. It also had Tom, U.S. Army, embroidered in gold stitching. I thought it was pretty slick when I ordered it online. Do you like it? Does the helicopter look accurate? I studied the VFW's website to see what the Hueys looked like during the Vietnam War, I'd asked him. It's the best darn present I've received since Reagan got elected in 1980, he had said. I even found time to get back out to do the walks with the old folks on weekends. I also finished up my court-ordered community service. I had the option between teaching basketball to at-risk youth and picking up garbage on the highway. I opted for the garbage because I didn't want to suffer the embarrassment of being ridiculed by a bunch of broccoli-haired Zoomers for airballing every two-pointer. As I mentioned, things were going pretty well, so naturally I thought it would be a good idea to make my life exponentially more complicated. I decided to reach out to my mother. The last time we had spoken had been approximately 6 months ago, and it ended in a big fight about money. Well, it wasn't so much about money as it was about her wondering why I couldn't just magically materialize out of the ether everything she could possibly need. Her heart meds, lotto tickets, Virginia Slims, Mom wanted it all. When she didn't have a boyfriend, I'd hear from her a lot more regularly, and the conversation would usually steer toward me buying her stuff. However, I hadn't heard from her since the before cancer time, so I knew she probably had some loser living in with her. Hey, can I call? I texted her one evening, not expecting a response until a few days later. It took a lot of courage for me to do it, but I knew I would have some time to consider how I would handle the conversation. However, I was blown away when I immediately saw the little dancing text bubbles pop up. Sure, go ahead, she replied. I took a deep breath and dialed her phone number. Hey, Mom, it's me, remember, your son? Don't be such a wise guy, she said. You're the one who didn't want to talk to me for all this time. That's not what I remember from our last conversation, I said. It was 5 seconds into the phone call and we were already arguing. Last time we made it about 20 seconds before a fight started. I guess I'm improving on my game. Well, never mind. I wanted to check in. How have you been? I said, trying to squash the beef. I'm all right. I've got a new fella. He's great. His name is Craig, she said. Oh boy, another one of Mom's boyfriends. I've seen a lot of them come and go over the years. Many guys who work construction, a few bikers, a few unemployed guys, and one guy who was, I kid you not, a professional magician. Too bad he couldn't find a way to make himself disappear. Oh, cool. So happy for you. What's Craig do for a living? Pretend to slip and fall in the Walmart parking lot? Very funny, mister. How about you? Still playing video games for a job? Mom, I already explained that I'm an IT professional at a banking firm in the city, I said, frustrated that I'd been telling her this for years and she never remembered. Yeah, sounds like nerd talk to me. You play video games all day, she said dismissively. This was not going well. Listen, Mom, I've got some big news to tell you, I said. Well, don't tell me over the phone. Come over to dinner, she said. You sure Craig won't mind? I asked. He'll be here, but I already told him about you. The two of you will get along fine. Just come by tomorrow sometime. I'll cook the spaghetti you like. Okay, see you then, I said. I was not particularly excited to have to break the news about my cancer with this Craig character in attendance, but I couldn't say no to Mom's spaghetti. The following day at work, we got a trouble ticket at the IT shop about someone clicking on a spearfish link. This is when someone spoofs the site admin to steal login credentials. It's how the Hillary Clinton emails famously got hacked. Luckily, it was very unsophisticated, so our software stopped it before the employee could enter in anything. Hey, it looks like Miss Eliza was the one who clicked on that phishing link, Shane said. I'll take a look at how this thing got through our email filters, but can you go talk to her about being more careful? Yeah, I'll go talk to her, boss, I said. But you know, it's Miss Eliza, so be nice, Shane said. I'm always nice, I said. Miss Eliza was the longtime office manager who knew everyone's name and everyone's birthday, even though our firm had hundreds of employees. She was probably the nicest person I've ever met. When some hedge fund creeps bought a stake in the firm last year and recommended offshoring her job to a remote shop in India, a bunch of senior vice presidents threatened to quit in retaliation. Everyone literally loved her. It was also rumored that her son had died in gang-related violence a long time ago. That wasn't something we politely discussed at work. I poked my head into her cubicle and said, Miss Eliza, are you having some trouble with your email? Oh, darn it, I knew I shouldn't have clicked on that link. I just get tricked so easily sometimes. I thought it was you boys from IT. Well, you can always give us a call to check. We won't ever send you an email like that. But it's okay, nothing got compromised, I said. I'm actually glad you're here, she said with a smile. I heard you have cancer, is that true? Yeah, I'm the office cancer guy, I replied. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, she said as she stood up from her swivel chair. I thought that she was coming in for the hug. I'm not the most touchy-feely of people, so I reluctantly stood while she wrapped her arms around me. Thanks, Miss Eliza. Treatment's been going well, so I can't complain, I said. Well, what I would like to do is cook for you. Do you ever cook for yourself? She asked in a matronly manner. I'm no Anthony Bourdain, but I can whip up the basics, I said. So I'll come by tomorrow then, she said. You do have a kitchen at your place, right? It's not just a microwave and a hot pot. I actually had an oven that I almost never used. Hopefully it wouldn't explode when the gas finally got turned on. As long as we don't need to cook for an army, we should be golden, I said. 2 dinners and 2 nights. I felt like the man about town with such a busy social schedule. First up was Mom's. After work, I changed out of my polo for attire that would make me blend in with the old neighborhood. Some jean shorts and an Iron Maiden shirt with Eddie depicted as a pharaoh. I booked an Uber and was en route to my childhood home at the relatively early hour of 6 p.m. I didn't think Mom was geriatric enough where she started eating dinner at 5 p.m., so I figured I would be okay time-wise. Cruising through the old neighborhood brought back some good memories. Playing tackle football with the boys in the field behind the used car lot, racing our bikes to the liquor store to buy candy and Pokemon cards, and finding our first porno mag in Old Man McFinnigan's garbage. It was a hustler. But like a lot of working-class suburban neighborhoods, it had really gone downhill the last 10 years due to the drug addiction and inflation crises. You used to see the neighborhood dads getting off their shifts at the Toyota plant and hanging out on their porches drinking beer and joking around with each other. Now the same houses had people who looked like they didn't work at all and were just permanently collecting disability from the government. I suppose they were hanging out on their porches, but they were strung out on opiates, so there wasn't a lot of friendly chit-chat. The ones who weren't on drugs were morbidly obese and, like suburban Jabba the Hutts, would guffaw and curse at everyone who passed by their home. When the Uber driver pulled into the driveway, I noticed Mom's old Ford Ranger was up on jacks with a few socket wrenches scattered around it. She's outside smoking one of her Virginia Slims and gave me a little wave. "It's about time you got here. We're starving," she said. "Sorry, like most people on a Wednesday, I had something called a job," I replied. "I'm just saying you could have sent a text," she said. "Hey, what's up with the old Ranger?" I asked. "Oh, Craig is fixing my brakes. It's going to save me a few $100, she said. I wasn't very confident about Craig, the new beau, working on something as critical as automatic brakes. It was sort of like asking one of the island boys to do heart surgery. "That's the difference between my generation and yours. We actually know how to fix stuff while you just sit around and play video games," my mother said. Not wanting to get into a Generation X versus Millennial debate, I ignored her and walked into the house. The place was thankfully clean, and it was obvious Mom hadn't been smoking inside because the overflowing ashtrays I remember from my childhood had long since disappeared. I strolled into the tiny dining room, and a burly man in a white t-shirt was sucking down a Bud Light. "Hey there, guy. I'm Craig. Heard all about you," the lummox said as he extended his hand. "Yeah, the pleasure's all mine," I said. "Thanks for fixing up my mom's truck. Do you do a lot of brake pad replacements?" "All the time, man. I'm a mechanic," he said. "If you never need some work done, just let me know." I suppose that was a low-key dig on me because I was a carless urbanite. You win this one, Craig. My mother brought out dinner and scooped spaghetti onto everyone's plates. She fetched 2 Bud Lights and asked me, "Are you still sober? Are you drinking again, or what? I can't keep track." "Would it kill you if I had a soda?" "No, of course not. I bought your favorite brand." She produced a RC Cola from the refrigerator, which was my favorite brand when I was 12. I didn't even know they still sold these bad boys. I did my best not to act up during the dinner, because I planned on dropping the cancer bombshell when Mom brought out the Neapolitan ice cream for dessert, which she always served up when there was company. Unfortunately for myself, I had to suffer through the stultifying dinner conversation. Mom had some thoughts on the inflation crisis. "I used to be able to get a bag of groceries and still have money left over to buy my scratch-offs. Now it's like I need to take out a loan to buy hamburger meat. Did we lose a war or something?" Craig offered up some hot political takes. "I heard about these kids who dress up in cat ears. The school has to give them a litter box in class. What the heck's going on with that?" For some reason, he asked me like I was their spokesman. I talked about changes happening in the city core, foreigners buying up luxury property, rampant drug abuse, but at least my apartment had still maintained its rent-controlled status. "Sounds pretty crazy in town. You can always come back here and live with us, you know," my mother said. I would have rather set myself on fire than move back in with Mom, of course. She paused for a moment and then continued. "I could always use a little help around here paying the bills." So, we started talking about how Mom needed money. We could have been talking about the International Space Station or the cultural benefits of the opera, but somehow the conversation would always be redirected to my mother needing more cash. "What's the problem now, Mom?" I asked, rolling my eyes. "Well, they cut my hours at the Hobby Lobby, and Craig got his hours cut at the shop too. So I sold a few things around the house since the electric bill was past due." "Like what?" I asked. "Oh, I sold some old CDs I had that a collector wanted," she replied. "Was one of them the Winger commemorative edition?" I joked. "No, I would never sell my Winger," my mother chuckled. "But I did manage to finally get rid of that pile of old videotapes that were still in the Blockbuster cases. Remember when Tim was a manager at Blockbuster?" I vaguely remembered my mom and the guy from Blockbuster leaving me a VHS tape of Austin Powers 2, The Spy Who Shagged Me, as a cheap substitute for a babysitter while they stayed out way past my bedtime. "Plus, I sold all your N64 stuff," my mother said. "You did what?" I hollered. I immediately stormed out of the dining area and ran into my old room, which was being used for storing boxes. I pawed maniacally through the corner of the room that still had some of my old stuff. I found high school yearbooks, sports trophies from middle school, and other knickknacks from my childhood. But the box with the N64 console and all the games was missing in action. My beloved Mario Kart 64, my Banjo-Kazooie, and even my Superman 64, widely considered the worst game ever and purchased as a joke on my 13th birthday, all of it was gone, long gone. Mom! My voice cracked like a pimply-faced teenager. Craig and Mom both walked into the room and looked incredibly uneasy at how upset I was. Well, I'm sorry, my mother said. I didn't know those old video games meant so much to you. Just been sitting in this room for years. It had sentimental value, Mom. That's not a thing, she said dismissively. Yes, it is, I said, getting up in her face. These games you think are so stupid were the only thing I had growing up that meant anything to me. Heaven knows you never did anything nice for me, you drunk. Hey, bud, that's not cool, Craig interjected. Stay out of this, you moron, I said. I then made a very foolish decision to shove the cancer-free man who was twice my size. We're really doing this? Craig said as he grabbed me by the shoulders and pushed back. My serotonin-laden bones immediately grimaced in pain from the weight of the behemoth's strength. I flopped on the ground of my childhood room. Staring at the faux wood pattern on the floor took me back to my youth for a brief second, but then I got back up and attempted to regain my composure. I've got cancer, you two clowns. I've had it almost 2 months. Chemotherapy, doctors, puking, the works. That's why I came to dinner, you dummies. I'm the one suffering, not you. Try thinking about someone else for once. I started to cry like a petulant child. Both Mom and Craig stood there totally shocked, their faces frozen in disbelief. I'm out of here, I said as I dashed out of the house. I was 10 years old again, and I was running away from home because I had just had a fight with my mom. In those days, I could only dream about fleeing to a better life in the city. The farthest I ever actually made it was the neighborhood liquor store before my mother picked me up. But fast forward 20 years, and I did have a better life in the city, and I would make it. No one was going to pick me up now. Luckily, I was able to jump on an evening bus. The following evening, I was hoping the dinner festivities would be more pleasant with Miss Eliza arriving to cook. I'd done my best to clean up the kitchen and verify that the oven could turn on, although I did have to consult a YouTube tutorial. I wasn't exactly sure what she planned to cook. I also didn't know the etiquette on whether or not I should help. I guess I could chop veggies or do some menial task while she handled the grand course. The buzzer rang. It had a cold, inhuman sound, like it belonged in an apartment block in the Brezhnev-era Soviet Union. But, looking through the peephole, I saw Miss Eliza's warm face. She had 2 massive bags filled to the top with pasta, vegetables, a huge pot, a colander, and some other cooking accoutrements. Oh, wow, thanks so much for coming, Miss Eliza, I said, grabbing the bags. They were so big I hope my cancerous back wouldn't protest. Sure, thank you for having me, she replied. I was half expecting she might correct me to go with her more informal first name, but she didn't. I guess I was sticking with Miss Eliza for the evening, which was fine by me. So, Miss Eliza, can I help you cook? I'm not the greatest, I said. Don't worry about it. Just point me to the kitchen and I'll be fine, she said with a radiant smile. Do you want to listen to some music? I asked. Oh, sure. Put on something I can dance to, she said. I wasn't exactly sure what Miss Eliza would like. She's about the same age as my mom, but my mother still acted like it was 1987 and couldn't understand why Def Leppard wasn't still topping the charts. Not wanting to dwell into the selection too much, I turned on the Bluetooth and just threw on some Kanye. Everyone likes Kanye, I think. Miss Eliza immediately flew into action, placing pots in tactful positions throughout the kitchen. She was chopping up mushrooms and tomatoes so fast it would have made Steven Seagal jealous. She sautéed the vegetables with the grace of a circus acrobat. I was a bit taken aback seeing the demure woman I knew from the office operate with the agility of Carmy from The Bear. I wondered if she was going to scream hands at me. Wow, Miss Eliza, where did you learn how to cook? Oh, she laughed. I bet you thought I would be slow. Before I worked in an office, I was in charge of running a halfway house. Do you know what those are? It's a place for men when they just get out of prison and are looking for a job. Anyways, I had to cook sometimes, and it was a big group of men. You had to move quick to get everyone fed. Was it scary working around those guys? I asked. She looked at me like I asked a very strange and untoward question. No, of course not, honey, she said, turning back to her cooking. I twiddled my thumbs for a while Miss Eliza did all the hard work. Normally, I would be suspicious if a person did something so nice for me, like they were angling to run a grift. But like everyone else at the office, I knew Miss Eliza had a good heart. So I felt sort of guilty that she was busting her hump and I was kicking back and relaxing. Cancer or no cancer, I felt like I didn't deserve this sort of gold star treatment. To avoid being a total slug, I quickly set the table with the fancy ceramics and glassware that you could purchase from Target. Okay, bon appetit, Miss Eliza exclaimed, bringing down a gigantic platter of pasta with some sort of fancy sauce on top. She first heaped enough on my plate to feed a family of 4, and then just a smaller portion on her own. I invited her to pray, and she said the Lord's Prayer, although it was a version I was not familiar with. Perhaps she was Catholic. I took the first bite, and she just sat there perfectly still, staring at me, like she was awaiting the results of the Megabucks lottery. It's delicious, I said. I had no idea my kitchen was capable of such culinary miracles. Cooking's not hard, she said. You just have to get a little practice and buy the right ingredients. I can show you some moves later. Dinner was enjoyable, and the conversation was pleasant. I was afraid we wouldn't have that much to talk about except me having cancer. But once we got over gossiping about the office, Miss Eliza let me in on her past. So, you might not believe this, but I used to have a lot of fun when I was young. I know I'm going to make myself sound really old, but it was the early 90s, and we used to go out every Friday and Saturday night. The early 90s? Was there dinosaurs walking around? Very funny, mister, she laughed. We usually go to house parties. There would be drinks, dancing, and everyone was listening to You Can't Touch This by MC Hammer and Poison by Belle Biv DeVoe. Everything was on the radio in those days, and we'd drive around blasting it, making all the neighbors mad. It was a great time to be alive. Did everyone wear those parachute pants? I inquired. See for yourself, she said. She showed me a grainy photo from a folder entitled Memories on her camera roll. It was a photo of a party with tons of babes in colorful 90s outfits and teased hair. There were a lot of guys with a flat top haircut that made them look like Wesley Snipes in Demolition Man. There were huge speakers and a stack of black contraptions labeled Pioneer. I think archaeologists would have called it a stereo. Wow, which one are you? I asked. She pointed to a very young and thin version of herself that looked like it could have been her daughter in the present day. Can you believe it? Do you think I was attractive? She asked. Sure, you were the whole package. It's amazing how confident and attractive everyone was 30 years ago. The microplastics in the food supply must be turning us all ugly. Maybe. Things were definitely different then, she commented. One thing that you do not see today was that everyone watched the same TV shows and listened to the same music. It sounds lame, but I liked it because you could talk to anyone about something that had been on the TV, even if you didn't know them yet. There was this funny show called In Living Color, and at my job the next day, we would all be reenacting the skits. Maybe this sounds a little strange to you. No, it's cool, I said as sincerely as possible. I was kind of impressed that Miss Eliza was able to wax nostalgic so eloquently. My mother never wanted to tell me about the halcyon days of the early 90s. I was only able to learn about the era from flipping through her old photo albums and CD collection. Like an explorer who stumbled across an ancient lost civilization, I had to put the pieces together all myself. I guess things just weren't as exciting for us millennials, I said. I mean, there was the financial crisis in 2009, which you never really recovered from. I was just a dumb teenager at the time, but the cultural milieu in the 2010s was just sort of bleh. You sound like my son. He always thought he was born in the wrong era, too. He wanted to live in Los Angeles in the 1990s and hang out with Tupac and those types of guys, she said. I did not know how to respond when she brought up her son, so I kept my big mouth shut. You know about my son, right? Miss Eliza asked. Everyone gossips about him at the office, or at least they used to, a while back when he was murdered. I may have heard a rumor or two, but I don't know the whole story, I said. He was a very good boy. He just kind of fell in with the wrong crowd that made him do some bad things. When my husband died, he was only a teenager, but he always made time to take care of his mother. I have some old photos from him. Would you like to see? He'd be about the same age as you, if he were still alive. I admit that I had some preconceived notions about her son, simply based on how he died. I was expecting a MySpace-era thug with Timberland boots and a blunt dangling from his grill. Those were the sort of people who used to bully me when I was a kid and fell in with the gangbanger lifestyle. However, I should have checked myself because the pictures of Miss Eliza's son told a different story. There were pictures of him kissing a baby kitten, another one of him looking stoic while hugging a younger boy, and there was a pic of him in his McDonald's uniform. He worked at Mickey D's for a bit, if you can believe that, Miss Eliza said. He was so good at getting to work on time that he would make sure I was the one who wasn't late getting to the office. Miss Eliza's lips began to quiver and she started crying. I wasn't exactly sure how to handle this situation, so I gave her a pat on the back. Suddenly she stood up from the table and pressed her bosom against my chest. She squeezed me so hard that I thought my fragile bones might be crushed into powder. You remind me of my son. I'm sorry. I know it's not right, but sometimes I just want to hold someone like I used to hold my son," she said, still crying. "I think a lot of people treat you like a mother. I know I did tonight. So I think it's fair if you treat others like your children," I said, using reason to try and comfort her. I probably should have just stayed quiet. Miss Eliza stopped crying and muttered, "Thanks for that." So, Miss Eliza was using me as a proxy for a long-deceased son, and I was using her as a stand-in for my dysfunctional mother. I'm no shrink, but I think that is what you call a codependent relationship. It wouldn't have been healthy to make this dynamic a long-term deal. Fortunately, Miss Eliza would soon change gears and assume a new role as matronly scold. She used the bathroom and came out looking a bit more fresh. "Do you still talk to your mother?" she asked. "I do," I said. "I actually had dinner with her and her idiot boyfriend last night. It was terrible." "Why? What happened?" Miss Eliza asked. I wanted to break the big news about my cancer, but she had me over for dinner just to introduce her new boyfriend, Craig, who is a moron. "Was he mean?" Miss Eliza asked. "Well, no, not really at first. He offered to fix my car, even though I don't have one. But then he ended up pushing me," I said. "Did you push him first?" Miss Eliza asked. "Well, yes, but, I have cancer, so he shouldn't have pushed me," I said, trying to regain my confidence. "Did you tell him you had cancer?" Miss Eliza kept peppering me with the questions. "No, I guess not at that point," I said. "Okay then," Miss Eliza said. "But how was your mother terrible?" "She was trying to be nice, but I found out she sold off my entire N64 collection. The stuff was invaluable to me," I stated. "Why did she sell it?" Miss Eliza continued with the interrogation. "She said she had to pay the electric bill, but... so she had to sell some dusty old video games to keep the lights on," Miss Eliza interrupted. "But she was the one who was out of line." Miss Eliza kind of gave me a side-eye glance. It's like I wandered into a comments section full of reaction gifs. I knew it didn't look good that I was upset with my mother for prioritizing her housing necessities over my video games that I no longer played. But it was her pattern of behavior, I swear. My phone started ringing again. It had been ringing all day, but I had it on silent because it was my mother and I was ignoring her. "Hey, why are you looking down at your phone? Someone calling?" Miss Eliza asked. "You're never going to believe this, but it's Mom. She's been calling all day, but I really don't have the energy or patience to talk to her right now." "Then let me talk to her," Miss Eliza said as she reached over and practically ripped the phone out of my hand. "Hello? This is Miss Eliza." "No, you've got the right number." "No, I'm a coworker and we're having a work dinner together." "No, it's not like that." "He's busy, but can I take a message?" "Oh, okay. Also, he has a message for you. He told me to tell you that he's very sorry about the N64 video games and he wanted to apologize." "Yes, that's exactly what he said." "Okay, I'll pass along the message. Thank you. Bye-bye." Miss Eliza hung up the phone and said, "Your mother said she's sorry too. So, you shouldn't let some silly thing get in the way of you too. Stop fighting and enjoy your time together. I would give everything I have in my life for just 5 more minutes with my son." Thanks, Miss Eliza. It really puts things into perspective. So that's how I got proven with facts and logic that I was the one being a complete jerk rather than my own mother or Craig. I admit to being quite disarmed by Miss Eliza's kindness. I didn't expect she was going to go in for the kill like she had to prove me wrong. In the long run, I'm grateful she did what she did, though. I started to clean up the dishes, and Miss Eliza helped me. She told me more about those wild nights in the 90s, and she mentioned she still had a vintage Detroit Pistons bomber jacket lying around somewhere. I told her to sell it on Facebook Marketplace if she needed some quick cash, since kitsch always paid well. As she was leaving, I thanked her for a great evening, and she said, "Now you know what you have to do with your mother now, right?" I let out a big sigh and said, "I sure do. I don't want to do it, but I will since you said so." "Hey, can I call?" I texted Mom. End of story. Thank you for having a listen to this tale of Cancerika. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below whether you like the story or not. A forthcoming ebook, print book, and audiobook with all 12 tales will be released on April 18th, 2025 on Amazon and Audible. Links are posted in the description below. The Pre-order is available for the ebook. It's $4.99 or free if you're an Amazon Prime. You can shoot your mouth off at me over on X. I'm at Beauheart. Please visit friendlyfrogpress.com to see our collection of ebooks, paperbacks, and audiobooks that are for sale at Amazon and Audible. Until next time, this is Paul Beauheart, signing off.